ways of writing. One, jottings in a notebook, associative, strange, spontaneous to some extent, immediate, written as events are unfolding. And two, a memoir written in retrospect, ultimately failed, that's been locked away in a suitcase and is uncovered and gives us clues about Svensson's life and the love triangle that maybe Thomas will tell us more about when we get to the passages in which we read about it.
It's always really... This book came out in Germany in 2008, and I've been reading from it quite a bit. But it's really nice to have someone sitting next to me who can actually summarize it.
Because not in less than 4 minutes.
I still can't do it. But as you were talking, I was thinking maybe that was the process really. I've written this somewhat messy book, and I know all these backstories, and Ross somehow cleaned it up and can summarize it in at least 4 minutes.
One thing translators always do is reread. And I remember Nabokov said of readers should be rereaders. When you read a book the first time, he says you don't grasp anything of the art of the book. Because a book is like a painting, it's a whole. And only when you reread it do you see it as a totality and you see all the different interlocking parts in their dynamic interrelation. And I think translators are forced to be rereaders. Many of us don't bother to read books a second time, or there's so many great books to read that doesn't seem worth it.
How often have you read this book?
Well, I read it once through before I translated it, and while translating it, I went line by line through it at least twice. Whether that counts as reading, I went through every line at least twice, and then while...
And you ask, for every line, you ask me a question also?
For each line I ask you about 3 or 4 questions. Because lines in German can be more than one actual line. A sentence can be more than a line, quite a bit more in German. Right, so I've gone through it line by line at least 3 times, but each successive revision I consulted it again, so in some sense.
I only read it, as a writer, when you write a book, you cannot read it as if you haven't written it, I think. And I was hoping to get that, to have that experience probably 10 years down the road, when I've written a couple more books and this was some, I was hoping that I'd forget about the characters and forget about this book. And did I ever tell you, I had this, reading the translation, I almost had this experience that I could read the book as a reader because it was a second language and there was some distance to it.
Yeah.
So I was, I was looking at it and thinking, oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it's a fun book to read. I had the privilege, it's the same when you translate a book, you can never read it again. But I had the privilege of reading this book before I knew for sure whether I would translate it. So I got to read it the first time really as a reader and be in the immediacy of it and be gripped by the suspense. And I remember I was drinking wine and the characters were drinking wine, and you have this identification you can't possibly have when you're translating it, and you're like, okay, what's that type of wine called in English? And you overthink everything. You can't have
this. You can translate while drinking wine.
Yeah, I could, but the book wouldn't be quite as well thought through.
Okay, so I think I'm going to read from the second protagonist part, which is it's just this is actually the scene where the woman yesterday fainted.
Right. Disclaimer: no legal liability lies with the reader.
Okay, so it's the bloodiest scene in the book, yes, and it's also very short. It's the story of the love triangle, Thule, Svensson, and Felix, and the dog that's in the title is in there too. His name is Lula. In this chapter, later he becomes Lua, and you'll find out why he's later called Lua. They're in Brazil in 1995. Flies circle the policeman's dog in the bloody lambskin. Welcome to Serra Verde, says Felix, and Thule replies, we should save the dog. 2 deaths on the first day are too much for me. Amputation, Felix asks with a laugh, right? Thule knows what to do. She studies medicine. She sends me to the goats, David to the liquor shacks, and Felix to the truck. In the sick room next to the kitchen, she finds isopropyl alcohol and an old scalpel. In the office, a roll of packing string. Felix gets the ball cutter from the pickup. I milk a goat. David gets liquor at one of the shacks. He mixes it with my goat milk. Tuli pulls Lula's dry jowls to the side and pours the spiked milk between his teeth. Lula doesn't resist. He swallows half a bowlful, then he lays his head on the ground. Tuli rolls a cigarette and takes a sip herself. We pass around the animal bowl. We tear the Sunday tablecloth of the Fundação Ayuda de Nossa Senhorita into fine strips. Then Tuli stamps out a cigarette and asks for the belt from Felix's pants. She fastens the drunk dog's snout shut. Hold tight, she says. So we hold tight. Felix the hind legs. David straddles the animal and clasps the intact foreleg. I hold Lula's head in one hand and the injured leg in the other. I can see the white bones in the wound. Tuli now ties off the leg above the knee. Come on, she says, as she tightens the tourniquet with all her might. Come on, and Lula opens his eyes. Only a little bit more blood comes out. Lula doesn't move. He doesn't move when Tuli cuts into the healthy fur over the wound and opens the flesh. He doesn't move when she severes the sinews and the bones lie bare. Lula doesn't flinch when she waves away the flies and disinfects the bowl cutter. He doesn't tremble like David, and he doesn't clench his teeth like Felix when Tuli clamps through the bones with two cracking movements. Lula and I don't look away. His eyes are wide and glassy. With Lula's head in my hands, my vision blurs. The tears I managed to swallow before are dripping on the dog, into his face, into his eyes. Tuli pours isopropyl alcohol into the wound and binds the flaps of skin with packing string. She bandages the stump with the tablecloth strips. Then it's over. Half of Lula's left foreleg is lying on the ground. Let go, says Tuli, standing up. Lula still doesn't move. My first amputation, says Tuli, and now she smiles. And then Felix throws up in the animal bowl, which she holds out to him. Okay.
Okay, everybody's still intact.
Actually, it happens when I write about the two cracking movements.
Yeah.
And I really don't like that. And she apparently was one of those people who can't hear about blood, or they can't see blood, and
she's also someone who listens to a literary text, and it's so visceral for her. Or at least your text was so visceral that she felt it as a. I mean, if I saw that happening, I would probably be unconscious. But if I heard it in a literary text, there's some distance.
She has a great imagination, probably. Anyway, yeah. So this is the second voice. This is the sort of an adventure novel, a coming of age story. That's the book in the book, as Ross explained. And I think we're going to read one more short chapter. Ross is going to read it. And this short chapter is set in Finland, and it's the year 2000. And as I said, there are plenty of places, different places, where my protagonists go and live. And this is at the turn of the century, or the millennium in Finland, and it's the coldest night of the year. We're in a little town called Oulu, which is pretty far north in Finland. And there's another town mentioned, Rovaniemi. That is where Santa Claus resides. So actually, when we were kids, we sometimes sent mail to Finland and addressed to Santa Claus. That was something we did in Germany. Okay, so this is a little bit about Santa Claus and a little bit about the happiest moment in this love triangle's existence. And unfortunately, this is really it's the shortest chapter. It's a passing moment. And the dog that used to be called Lula, after the Brazilian, at that time, presidential candidate, is now named differently.
Right. The chapter is called Shitty City 2000. What you don't hold on to disappears. The hotel room on the second floor, a clock was ticking. I lay between Felix and Tully and smelled the darkness, yawning. A double bed and Tully's hand on my neck, her smell in my ear and Felix's leg over mine. It's bitterly cold in Oulu, I thought, and the darkness is a black dog. We lay under blankets and jackets. The heat vent was breathing dryly and uselessly. At midnight, the champagne in the glasses was frozen. The darkness rose and sank calmly. Through the closed blinds fell the red remains of the neon sign next door, Ravi Tola. Firecrackers exploded on the street. The darkness lay at our feet. Felix, in this cold, having your own fur doesn't help anymore. So he put his blue parka on Lua and tied the left sleeve in a knot. Lua lay there like a disabled veteran. In this cold, only liquor and other bodies help, said Felix, at which point Lua yawned, and I could smell his yawn. It must have been morning now, even if I couldn't see the clock. The morning of the first day of the new year, and I asked into the dark, is anyone hungry? And Tully said, breakfast for 3. The bright light downstairs in the lobby. 3 anti-depression lamps over the buffet. In the constant night of the train station Hotel Touristi, there was only a Japanese man in a Santa Claus costume sitting at a table and drinking his crazy reindeer as he'd been doing last night. He blew a streamer toward me. At a reception, a woman with a fur cap and a cigarette was mopping the remnants of New Year's Eve off the floor. The cleaning bucket was boiling, the water was steaming on the linoleum. Outside the window, someone had spray-painted black letters on the wall across from the hotel, Paska Kaupunki. I loaded up a tray. Breakfast for 3, Tilly had said, so I took toast for 3 and cranberry marmalade and butter and milk, cornflakes and coffee and packaged cheese on a stick. Lua liked Lapin Kulta beer, so I took a few cans. Tully loved apples, I took a Brayburn. Then 2 vodkas in little plastic bottles and orange juice because Felix chased liquor with juice. I took the last 3 mandarin oranges and juggled. Then one fell on the floor and rolled to the feet of the cleaning woman with the cap. The Japanese man was waiting in the finished night and humming in the empty lobby. He was waiting for the air